By now, I assume you know that maintenance will make or break your property management business. If it's done right, it will improve literally every aspect of your tenant and owner relationships. If done wrong, it will be the cause of everything going wrong. It could be what puts you on the owner's hot seat, or it could eventually be the straw to break the camel's back. Either way, at Cavalry, we believe that maintenance plays the lead role in your PM business, and we advise you to treat it as such. It is the source of the good, the bad, and the ugly. In this presentation, we're not only emphasizing what's in the book, but we're also approaching it from a more practical perspective. Let's hop to the next slide and get started. All right, time to get started. This presentation serves as an addition to the first chapter of the book called Scaling Starts with Maintenance. Here, we'll discuss the different roles maintenance plays within a property management business. The more valuable you are to your property owners, the better you are perceived as a company, especially compared to your competitors. Owners trust you with their properties. They trust you to turn their investment into profit, because do not fool yourself. Bad management will lead to a low or negative return on their investment. Good management, you guessed it, starts with maintenance. Besides making sure your owners are happy, the same applies to your tenants. Unhappy tenants means more churn, which in turn means less profit for the owner. Maintaining or increasing a property's value is up next. That seems obvious, but it needs to be discussed nonetheless. Legal compliance is a silent powerhouse because when, not if, you get sued, you'll increase your chance of winning by a lot. Cost efficiency sounds obvious as well, but you'd be surprised how much savings you're likely leaving on the table. Next up, we have operational smoothness, which ties it all together. Because a great maintenance team is a testament to how your business is run. And finally, risk management. It's the one we tend to forget, yet failing at this could be disastrous. Let's tackle them one by one. Owner satisfaction. As Diego laid out well in the book, there's nothing more important than owner satisfaction because 'tis ultimately what pays the bills. Of course, that doesn't mean tenants or vendors are not important. Quite the opposite, actually. Without good vendors, maintenance is a nightmare. Without tenants, well, there wouldn't even be a need. Now, what are the owner's expectations? Well, for one, profitability, and I'm not only referring to maintenance invoices, but also to churn. Tenant turnovers are expensive because it's a combination between getting faced with unexpected repairs and potentially missing out on 1 or more months of rent income. Now, of course, the easiest way to become more profitable is to prevent losing lawsuits. So, as we all know, those can be very expensive. Documentation and knowing who your vendors are probably the most important aspects to prevent lawsuits. Then third, one that is often forgotten, but most owners care about their reputation. Look, the real estate industry is small, especially on a local level. And even more important, many owners rent their properties to people they actually know. So, keep these things in mind and ensure your owner's hard-earned reputation is kept high. Keep all of it in mind and you will have happy owners who will refer you to everyone in need of your services. That is the key to growth. To achieve tenant satisfaction sometimes might seem impossible. And although you will never be able to please every tenant, keeping the following things in mind will definitely help. Number one is all about understanding their situation and showing empathy for it. Most of us have been a tenant before, and we know how it can feel at times. Tenants live at your owner's property, but the owners technically hold the keys, yet it's the tenant's home. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, tenants often feel like they have no say because they rarely do, because all maintenance issues need to be addressed by your maintenance team. If done right, it's actually an easy process for them. If it's not done right, they are reminded about the lack of input they have in resolving these issues. Just be aware of this because when you show empathy, tenants will feel it. Now, the best way to avoid tenant frustration is by acting as the savior. I learned this from Diego, who learned this from Pete Newbig. In short, this just means providing great customer service. You are serving them and making sure you get their issue resolved as soon as possible. But doing the work alone is not enough. It is more important to let the tenants know. Your words matter, and it will affect how they perceive your services. You can say things like, "This must be annoying to deal with. I completely understand, and I will do everything in my power to get this resolved for you as soon as possible. I will keep you posted every step of the way. Remember, always say what you do and do as you say." That brings me to the next point, which is communicating well. By keeping your tenants in the loop, you are avoiding a whole lot of problems. By being proactive, you are avoiding calls, emails, and sometimes angry calls and emails. These calls can initiate the dreaded snowball effect that when you are so busy replying to questions that even more tenants get upset because now their responses are delayed as well. You can avoid all of this by communicating proactively. Along with communication goes transparency. If you lay out what a tenant can expect, they will be less likely to reach out. Not only that, but make sure to set the right expectations with them. If the new fridge can only be delivered in about 7 days, then let them know from the get-go. A tenant only knows what you tell them. Even if it's bad news, sharing it will always be the better option. Property value. As I mentioned in the previous slide, owners trust you with their property. That means they deem you responsible for keeping its value and market willing have the value increased over time. Whether it's identifying horror tenants or making sure emergency type work orders are mitigated as soon as possible, the owners expect you to be on top of your game. No matter what information you gather when dealing with tenants or during property visits, make sure to let the owners know. Only armed with information can the owner make decisions. Make sure that everything is in writing as well. Yes, that means following up with an email after hanging up that phone call. A recurring theme in maintenance is the preventative kind. This helps you in multiple ways. 1, it makes sure you are taking the necessary steps to avoid potential problems. For example, preventative HVAC checkups in preparation of the summer months. It also allows you to have eyes and ears on the ground. Make sure to ask your vendors to keep an eye out for strange behavior or potential bad tenants. I promise, over a long enough period of time, these eyes and ears will prove to be very beneficial. Last but not least, imagine the best looking house on the street. They always stand out. Not all owners will want to do this, but you can always suggest scheduling bi-weekly landscaping even if the property is not vacant. Of course, always make sure to check your state and local laws before implementing this. No, just remember you have a big responsibility in maintaining your owner property's value. If you haven't done anything wrong, then why would you be afraid of a lawsuit? Right? Well, not really. You see, lawyers and judges need facts to work with. The best facts have timestamps attached to them. If you document everything, you will be able to prove what you dispute. If you document everything digitally, you now have access to all timestamps. Beware. Lawsuits are always around the corner. When dealing with money and people's livelihoods, things can become emotional real fast. That said, many can be avoided by presenting the counterparty with your documentation so they'd feel silly moving forward with the suit. When your vendors sound the alarm bell and danger looms, I advise you to acknowledge the potential dangers, even if that means you might lose that client. Not only can it prevent you from losing a devastating lawsuit, but you are also doing the right thing by the residents. But how do you get all of this done? By having the right systems in place. These guide the maintenance coordinator to 1, request feedback from the vendors, enough until they start sharing their findings by themselves. But it also refers to having preventative maintenance initiatives in place to proactively look for dangerous situations. You can start to notice how everything ties together and how important maintenance truly is to your property management business. Next up, cost efficiency. And by now, I'm sure a few of you are getting bored of hearing it. But here I go again. Preventative maintenance is here to save the day once more. Cost efficiency is more than finding affordable vendors, and sometimes you have to spend some money to avoid losing any. And yes, that's exactly what preventative maintenance is all about. A great way to save your owner's money is by implementing a troubleshooting step into your workflow. In some cases, you can ask the tenant a few questions or have them perform some troubleshooting steps. A great tool for that is ChatGPT. Simply ask it to write 10 or more troubleshooting steps and add your tenant's complaint. It will know what to do. From those responses, pick the ones most suited. Simple acts like these will save thousands of dollars in unnecessary trip fees over time. Next up is leveraging the volume of work orders you send to your vendors. Even if you manage 50 or less units, you have some leverage and you should use it. The work you send their way is essentially marketing and sales cost free. You can ask them to provide discounts and mark those discounts on the owner's invoices. Another way to leverage your volume is to schedule your HVAC preventative maintenance at the beginning of the year for both the summer as the winter. This gives you a ton of leverage, no matter the size of your business. By scheduling both, you are also reducing the administrative headache of opt-ins and opt-outs significantly. Start honing in on your negotiating skills because you will need them. Trust in the leverage you have and understand that this is business. If your owner gets to see their savings, well, now you're scoring points. All right, another fun one. I see risk management as a close relative to legal compliance. Not only do they go hand in hand in that one often comes with the other, but both are also often preventable. Vendors come in handy once again, not only to keep an eye out on the living conditions, but also to identify potential hazards, like, for example, loose wiring. Leveraging your vendor's knowledge is a big one. You don't have to know it all. You simply can't. So instead, ask your vendors as many questions as needed. Be aware of the risks involved in case the work would not be approved by the owner. Safety equipment may not always be considered the owner's responsibility, but it's the owner's property after all. Depending on the season, you will deal with different types of risks. For example, CO poisoning is more of a winter risk, whereas forest fires are more likely to occur during the summer months. Now let's hop to the last slide of this presentation. Then finally, operational smoothness. This one ties it all together because without the right systems in place, there's just no way of managing all of this. Systems are the combination of human involvement, their processes and SOPs, and the software used for the systems to function efficiently. Processes, on the other hand, are more like checklists. They lay out the different steps one needs to take to complete a task. SOPs are the hows. They usually come in written or video tutorials. They're a step-by-step description on how to perform a certain process. And last but not least, your company culture. By that, I don't necessarily mean how happy people are to work at your company, but I'm referring to the company's core values. For example, if one of your core values states speed is king, then that could mean that a coordinator is allowed to opt for a higher trip fee if that would mean faster service. Not that a vendor would charge you more, but maybe a more expensive vendor does have a slot available a bit sooner. By having company value statements in place, you are giving your team more guidance without having to state certain scenarios.